Welcome into a Chop It Up Thursday here on the Hard Count, the People's College Football Show. It is Thursday, March 6, 2025. We always have a lot to unpack on every single show that we do together. Another reason to be subscribed, but especially today, man. We're tackling the future of college football. We're going to tackle the present of college football. A lot to dive into, so we're not going to waste too much more time. I want to start here. There is a lot of opportunity in 2025 for a coach who has not yet won their first national title to do so. So I got 5 coaches I'm looking at specifically here that I want us to unpack their path and their likelihood to win the whole thing when it's all said and done in late January in Miami. Late January is another discussion. I mean, the timing of this whole thing is another show for another time. But let's start here. Brian Kelly, I think when you look at his career, got a lot of boxes checked, man. I mean, he's coached a ton of games, had a lot of success at Notre Dame. I mean, played for the SEC championship his first season at LSU. He's coached a Heisman Trophy winner in Jaden Daniels. And one of the key accolades that's missing, though, national championship. Y'all, this could be the year they do it. Now, I don't have him as my most likely coach to get it done in this 2025 season. But when you look at Brian Kelly and just his story arc, I don't think anybody's really questioning if he can do it. It's just a matter of when he would do it. And with that being the parameters we're working with here, why not this year? Like I've said this a couple times about Brian Kelly. It's a very similar Brian Kelly to Natty conversation as it was for Leonardo DiCaprio and Oscars conversation. And nobody was questioning, would Leo ever win one? The question was always like, what movie will it be? How's he going to get it done? What year is it going to be? All it took was The Revenant for Leo. I thought Bryce Underwood might be Brian Kelly's Revenant. Turns out that's not the case. Maybe it was Garrett Nussmeier the whole time. Maybe Garrett Nussmeier is his Revenant. And so the reason why I don't have Brian Kelly a little bit higher on this list as the most likely coach in 2025, still want to see that defense step up a little bit. We'll talk transfer portal wants and needs here a little bit later in the show. But the schedule itself for LSU is a little bit spunky. All right, you got Clemson to open, at Clemson, Florida, at Ole Miss, South Carolina, at Vandy. You got A&M on the schedule, at Bama, at Oklahoma. Like, you see what I'm saying? There's a lot here where LSU still has to navigate. Now, if you've watched this show, you know we are irresponsibly high on LSU in 2025. Does it all come together in that favor we have towards LSU result in a national championship? I think it could. That's why he's on this list. But I really do believe it's still Leo to Oscars as it is BK to national title. I think this could be the year. Now, James Franklin, to me, is ahead of Brian Kelly on this list because of the context of it being 2025. If this was the next 5 years, I'd have a hard time not putting Brian Kelly ahead of James Franklin. But thinking about this, getting ready for the show today, y'all, in another universe, if Penn State had the kind of venom towards a Michigan or towards an Ohio State that the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry has, James Franklin's just multiverse Ryan Day. Because Ryan Day, what was it? Every single year, it's like, well, yeah, he's a great coach, wins a lot of games, but can't get over the hump, can't beat Michigan, can't win the national championship. And the Michigan thing is its own deal, but they just won the national title this past year. Ryan Day is obviously one of the best coaches in the sport. All James Franklin does, man, is win double-digit games every single year. But people have given him the moniker, sarcastically, of big game James, can't get it done, can't win the big one. And so when you look at 2025, this has a best shot kind of feel for Penn State. Not that it's the only shot, but it definitely has the best shot kind of feel. Drew Aller is back. Your backfield is back. Some key pieces on defense, they're back. You get Oregon at home. There's a new quarterback in Ohio State. There's a lot there for Penn State to be excited about. And the thing that I love even more than that for Penn State, when you look at the previous national champions in Michigan and Ohio State, one, they come from your conference, so you're measuring yourself up against what they've been the past couple of seasons. And, I mean, Penn State gave both those outfits a pretty good push in their national title years, so I'll leave that there. But they're following, to me, the training plan of what both those teams did in the offseason leading into their national championship. Not speaking to the actual strength conditioning of it all. I'm speaking more so to you bring back key pieces. A lot of proven production is back. Penn State, 33 in America when it comes to production they bring back from the season before. In addition to that, you go out and add some key staff acquisitions. Jim Knowles comes to Happy Valley with a national title ring on his finger. Cornell alum, Jim Knowles, as your new defensive coordinator. So there's a lot there for me to like about James Franklin, but I'm telling you, we're married to narratives. We like to win the social media side of things and dunk on coaches. And like, I'm all here for that. That's fun and games. But just know now, in the world of college football that we live in currently, narratives have never flipped quicker. So that's my take on it there. When we talk about James Franklin, I think this very much so could be the year. Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame is next on this list to me. I just think with him as the head coach, Notre Dame's kind of in like just Papa-Shot mode. Like, it might be this year, but if it's not this year, I think with the way that Notre Dame is positioned in college football, every single year you're going to have a week off during conference title weekend. You feel pretty good about the way that your schedule shakes out. You should be able to host a college football playoff game. And if you get Marcus Freeman into the college football playoff, we've seen those traits have a funny way of taking over. I understand we're going off of a one-season sample size of the 12-team playoff, but I don't think that's going away. And the other part I'll add to this, the talent gap that Notre Dame had to overcome this past season against teams like a Georgia, like a Penn State, I don't think they're going to have to overcome that in the future because of this past season. So if they get it done this year, a lot of that will have to do with the quarterback. Like, we'll see if it's Steve Angeli, is it CJ Carr, Kenny Minchie, I don't know. But if you get what you need at the quarterback position, it could be this year. Now, you start off with A&M and Miami. I get that's a difficult way to get it rolling, but the schedule as a whole, pretty navigable. And if it's not this year, I think that Marcus Freeman has Notre Dame in a spot where just hoisting up shots. If it's not this year, it could definitely be the following year or the year after, or we'll see. Now, these last two coaches I want to talk about, I think you're in coin flip territory, to be real, whether you put one guy at 1 or one guy at 2. It'll make more sense in a second here. I have Steve Sarkisian as my next coach that is likely to win a national championship in 2025. The reason why I don't have him at number 1 is relative to the schedule that Texas is going to play. They got to play Ohio State. They got to play Georgia. They got to go to Florida. You play Oklahoma at a neutral site. That's always a little bit of a spunky one. You got Texas A&M. But there's so much to me that you should feel confident in at Texas. And all of it has to do with Steve Sarkisian and how he's built that roster. Yes, you lose some key pieces on the outside. Yes, you lose your quarterback. But I don't think anybody is lowering expectations with Arch Manning walking into that QB1 spot. I don't think anybody is saying, oh, man, can Texas find a way to bounce back from all they lost? No, everyone's saying, okay, can Texas pick up where they left off? There's no step back for Texas. So the thing that is maybe encouraging if you're a Texas fan is I think Steve Sarkisian has pushed your football program to a place where every single year you'll have the roster that's on par with the Tier 1 teams in the sport. What it's going to come down to for you when it comes to winning a national championship, it's about the moments. It comes down to those moments. It comes down to the overtime spot against Georgia. It comes down to 1 yard line against Ohio State. If either of those moments shake a different way, Texas could have an entirely different finish to their season, especially that game against Ohio State. So the way I look at Steve Sarkisian, the way I look at Texas, they're 8 months pregnant, 9 months pregnant. It could be any time. You're looking at the exit strategy as to how to get to the national title. Like, you have your PTO set up so you can go take off to get to the game. Like, that's where Texas is at right now. So Steve Sarkisian could absolutely get it done this year. And across the SEC, too, it's worth noting, you feel as good about your quarterback as I think anybody else in the conference right now. A lot of new faces. One of the new faces being yours, but Georgia, new quarterback. Tennessee, we'll see what Nico Imaliava does for an encore. You look at Alabama, going to have a new quarterback. So there's a lot there where if you're Texas, at the most important position, you like your guy compared to their guy. More often than not, have to believe that. Now, to me, the coach that I believe is, as we sit here right now, the most likely to win their first national title in 2025 is Dan Lanning. Like, y'all, look at this schedule. This is Willy Wonka golden ticket vibes, man. No Ohio State, no Michigan, no Illinois, USC at the crib. Toughest game is at Penn State, and Penn State is on this list as well with James Franklin. But, the schedule, I think, is in a situation where, you should play for the Big Ten championship at the very least. And if you play for the Big Ten championship, even if you don't win it, Penn State lost the Big Ten title last year and had arguably the most navigable path of anybody in college football when it comes to that playoff run. It's not to knock them. I'm just saying, maybe, just maybe, you get into that Big Ten title game, you should feel good about your chances to go play for the whole darn thing. I also think the roster is at a spot where, regardless of returning production, I just kind of blindly trust the talent. I don't think that's irresponsible. Dan Lanning continues to stack elite recruiting classes. Multiple top 10 classes since he's been there. Will Stein, you could put me at quarterback, and we're going to be in good shape. Dante Moore, though, fortunately for Oregon fans, is going to be your guy next year. There's a lot to like here for me, paired with the schedule. So I think Dan Lanning and company, we did a college football playoff national title prediction. I want to say it was like late January, early February. Disgustingly early. I mean, it was just, like, look away early. But still, I think Oregon, I had them winning the national title in that game, or in that playoff prediction, rather, in the national title game against Texas. So it really is a taste test if you want to go Lanning or Sark there. Pepsi, Coke, doesn't matter. But those two, to me, are the most likely when it comes to winning their first national title in 2025, followed by Marcus Freeman, James Franklin, and Brian Kelly. All, I think, in the territory, in the neighborhood of getting it done here in 2025. So if you're trying to capture that first one, 12-team playoff this upcoming season, probably the last iteration of the 12-team playoff, this might be the time. No time like the present. Speaking of no time like the present, you got to make sure you maximize the present, right? You got to make sure you take it for all it's worth. And you can't maximize the present if you're hungry. So thankfully, this show, The Hard Count, brought to you by our friends over at Huel to make sure that you are nourished to the nth degree. All right? So finding it difficult to get time in for a balanced meal, to get breakfast, to get your lunch. I know life has got a funny way of working out to where meals sort of take a back seat. You find yourself getting lightheaded during the day, not getting enough in your system. Don't worry, Huel got you covered. All right? The Black Edition got 35 grams of protein, ready to drink, 27 vitamins and minerals, low in sugar. Huel is the global complete nutrition brand with over 500 million meals sold. All right? So 15% off plus a free gift using our code on this show, hardcount15 at Huel.com. Y'all have used this. I drink it, especially during the hours of the day where our little girl, who's a 3-month-old, is running around. Like, I don't have time to make a 5-course meal for our family. Huel oftentimes is the go-to for me. Again, personal favorite is the Black Edition, ready to drink. So again, 15% off plus a free gift for new customers using my exclusive code HARDCOUNT15 at Huel.com. Huel, nutritionally complete meals in minutes so you can focus on what really matters. So shout out to Huel, bringing y'all the hard count today. You know, also bringing you the hard count today, Mankato on the 1s and 2s. Not Mankato, like I think it's Mankato, Minnesota. Is that where that city is? I think Mankato. The Mankato though. Cato on the 1s and 2s. Brother, any notes there on that top 5? I know we chopped it up a bit before the show. Anything you want to add? Anything that's top of mind now as we take a look at 2025?
Yeah, JD, I think when you look at it, it's a great top 5. I think a lot of it's very interesting because I think like you mentioned before, you already picked Oregon to win the title early, and you picked Texas as a team to be best poised for the next 3 years of college football. So it's kind of interesting, I think, trying to balance those things. But overall, I think that top 3 is pretty bulletproof. I think those 3 coaches, you talk about Marcus Freeman, what he was able to do this year, and we talked about it talking into the show. If you take Marcus Freeman, Steve Sarkisian, and Dan Lanning and say, okay, all of their quarterbacks head-to-head in a national championship game or like a playoff environment, if they're all going to play the same, who do you expect to get the most out of the rest of that roster? Who's it going to be? Who do you think is going to do it? Marcus Freeman right now has the most readily available reason to pick him in that situation, just given the talent gap, like you mentioned, against the Penn State and a Notre Dame. You love what Texas has up front, especially in those big moments too. But when it comes to that championship killer instinct and winning in between those small margins, I think it's a very small margin between those top 3 head coaches. And then outside of that, it's just who can make it happen on the field. And I think Marcus Freeman right now might have the hottest hand. So I could see him going anywhere from 3 to 1 on that list, and vice versa with Dan Lanning and Steve Sarkisian. So I think that's like the unimpeachable top 3. But then after that, I think after this season, you mentioned kind of the recency of LSU having a Garrett Nussmeier, this kind of being maybe Penn State's make or break year, if it was that last year for as far as how much talent they have goes. I think after that, you can throw a guy like Lincoln Riley in there. You mentioned Lane Kiffin as well pre-show about what he can do in the SEC. I think a lot of it does have to do with your position. And I think if we're talking position, the more we talk about it out loud and the situation Notre Dame's going to be in the next couple years with a Marcus Freeman at the helm, having, like we mentioned, the South Bend Invitational up for grabs every single year as far as them hosting a playoff game probably every year and having a unique position to make it to the playoff every year and kind of having their own path. I'm kind of convincing myself maybe that Marcus Freeman deserves a 2 or a 1 spot, but I think overall you can't go wrong with that top 3.
Dude, if they were just all put into a room and said, all right, fight it out, just physically get after each other here, and whoever comes out is the national champion. Marcus Freeman, I think there's a video out there from the Notre Dame social team of him saying he wants to still be able to bench 350 and squat 350 all the time. And I'm like, okay, I'll bet on that guy. If I know that's not how we're deciding the playoff right now. We'll see how this thing is when it expands. Marcus Freeman, though, got that dog in him, and we saw his team respond to that dog in him, and that team had the dog in them, and there's a big reason why they went on that run. So I'm with you, though, bro. The South Bend Invitational is going to be something to watch here for the future, because I think we're in lockstep in the sense that that's not going anywhere. Like, Notre Dame restructured their whole academic calendar to be able to have finals at a certain point in the year, to be able to have more attendance for their potential playoff game, which chess moved by the powers that be at Notre Dame. But I'm with you, man. The margins are small within those top three. Very small.
Very small. I think you mentioned before, the closer we get to the college football season, the more juiced we're going to get. And I think I'm going to be watching on replay the Marcus Freeman video of him yelling at the boys, hyping them up before they went to Texas A&M and took the field at Kyle Field. If we're talking about just juice and that kind of coach, Marcus Freeman definitely runs away with it. But I think, obviously, there's a lot more factors that go into it. I'm definitely excited to see what this college football season is going to be already in the month of March. And I think those three head coaches in particular are going to have a nice, unique spotlight on them as far as performing at the highest level. And maybe I think when you just look in the future with Notre Dame, it's going to be they can't keep getting away with this type beat if they continue they continue year after year. If we look 5-10 years from now and they keep hosting and having a unique independent schedule that can kind of handcraft, we'll see if the rest of college football and the powers that might have an issue with Notre Dame's position and try to maybe get them in a conference, just given what Marcus Freeman's already shown us up until this point.
The nice thing, too, if you're Notre Dame, you want us to come to your conference? Okay, well, this is what we're getting from NBC. All right, you gotta make it worth our while here. I wonder how far off we are from that. But, Cato, good stuff as always, man. I'm excited for us to catch up throughout the show. No Hines. So here's the thing. The SEC is changing. We mentioned a couple of different ways the playoff is changing in the future already throughout the show, with it maybe going to 14 or 16. But one thing that's not changing for the foreseeable future, at least, I'm sure it changes at some point, is the SEC. And right now, the game in the SEC that is the table setter for the rest of the conference is Texas, Georgia. Now, we get this game this year. We got it last year, and it was awesome both times we got it. But it's interesting when you talk about this matchup in the context of what the conference is, because obviously, with Texas being new to the conference, this hasn't always been the case. But think about previous table setter games. What I mean by table setters is it's going to have a large impact on who plays for the conference title. And by nature of it being the SEC, probably going to have a pretty good impact on who ends up playing, or at least competing for, the national championship. But previous table setter games, to give you an example of how we're thinking about this, Bama LSU, Saban and Les Miles going back and forth, 9-6. As a final score, I believe it was for what was at that point in time like the game of the century. They ran it back and played for a national championship, Bama LSU. Most recently, Bama Georgia. Kirby got a little pep in his step. All right, the boys in Athens got rolling a little bit. We saw them play multiple times for a national championship. Saw them play 2 years ago, I guess it was now, when Saban had his farewell. We didn't know at that time. His farewell tour, his last year coaching college football. Won the SEC over a Kirby Smart Georgia team that had a massive factor, not just in the conference itself, but for the national championship. So now as we sit here in the new era with the new SEC, again, I think it's Texas and Georgia. The unique part about this matchup relative to the other matchups we just spoke to, there's no division in the SEC anymore. So it's not like we see Texas and Georgia play in the regular season. If we're lucky enough, okay, awesome, that's going to determine who comes out of the X part of the SEC. No, it's like, well, those are the best two teams in the conference right now, at least. They're going to run it back in a few weeks in Atlanta. And so this isn't necessarily a take on the conference title in of itself, but I do think when you zoom out a little bit as to how college football is changing in the future and how the conference, or not this conference, the national title race is changing in the future, I think this is big, yes, for standings, like we already spoke to. I think it's big just from a mentality and an emotional side for both teams. Reason why I say that, we talk a lot about the heavy bar factor on this show. Like, we think that your schedule, if it's easy, more power to you. But in some respects, if you have to, what we call lift the heavy bar, you have to play a team like a Texas or a Georgia or whoever else in your conference across the scope of a regular season, that might benefit you when it's time to play some of those more meaningful games in December, in early January, in the national championship. And I think that's kind of the case for whoever ends up coming out of the SEC, of course, but specifically in this game, I hope and pray we get Texas, Georgia on a semi-routine basis when we get the 2026 schedule for the SEC and beyond. But if you walk into a spot where you're playing a Clemson or a Penn State, and you're one of those two teams having beaten one of the other teams, speaking of Texas, Georgia now, there's a little bit of extra confidence now. Right? Hey, we beat a Kirby Smart coached outfit. We beat Steve Sarkisian and whatever the 5-star is he has at quarterback that season. Like, there's something to that. There's something to the emotional side of things, the confident side of things for your football team to have that swagger and that pep in their step. And so when we look, to the future of college football, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Georgia and Texas, in the national title semifinals every other year, if not every season. Like, I genuinely think that the way these teams are built is what modern college football is calling for. Two of the best coaches in the sport. Depending on how you feel about Ryan Day, you can make a case for them being the top two coaches in the sport. They're always, it seems like, going to have top-tier rosters. Look at the recruiting rankings this past season. You had Texas finish number 1. You had Georgia finish number 2. Coincidence? I don't think so. Not saying it's going to be the case every single season, but I'd be surprised if we saw Texas and or Georgia anywhere outside of the top 3, top 5 going forward. Like, they're always going to have what's required. The Kirby Smart effect probably helps Georgia when it comes to acquiring top talent at the high school level. Not probably, it definitely does. But on the Texas side of things, I'm sure the Sark thing helps as well, but we've seen Texas now just straight up win on the NIL front as well. So they're going to have what they need. And so as we talk all this through, what this means for the rest of college football, obviously Texas and Georgia are always going to be in that discussion as long as those coaches are there. I really believe that. But in terms of the SEC, the thing that I think is interesting is the way it applies pressure to an LSU, to an Alabama now in the post-Nick Saban era. Texas A&M, like, if those two schools, and Texas and Georgia, are going to semi-routinely be the class of the conference, and that game is going to have a large impact on the rest of the conference, I think we're in a unique spot now where the kickback effect for those schools, not kickback in terms of we're kicking back, the kickback in terms of we're trying to get back in this thing, there's never been more power put into the hands of those schools. Like, if I'm LSU and I'm tired of seeing Texas or tired of seeing Georgia at the top of the SEC standings, I now have more power than ever as a fan to go do something about it. Like, we talk about Michigan getting pissed off for greatness and how that really was the case, I think, this past cycle with them going and having a top 10 class and having one of the top portal classes. It wasn't just because they started to just care about football more inside that building. No, they had a Larry Ellison get in the game, a Dave Portnoy get in the game. Same deal for these schools like Alabama, and I mentioned LSU. A&M's been in the game. Like, so I think we can see now the pendulum swing little more viciously back the other direction against this kind of a thing where a Texas or a Georgia controls the SEC. But I tell you what, you're going to have to swing with some real force if you want to be able to knock either of these teams off the top of the conference. That's not me saying that other teams won't win the conference in the future. It's not me saying LSU can't get it done this season or Bama or whatever. But when you talk about, again, the table-setting matchups, the table-setting teams for the conference going forward, I really do think it's Texas and Georgia for the reasons that I just mentioned here. So all in all, the pressure has been applied to the rest of the SEC. How they respond now is what I'm really excited to see. Because you keep saying now in the SEC, it just means more, just means more. Well, it just means more. How much more from a dollars and cents perspective? Because that's, I think, what's going to make the difference and separate for a lot of these teams here moving forward. Ole Miss included in that discussion as well. But that's going to be a fun one to watch as that unfolds, dude. A lot of fun because those two coaches, obviously, right now, I would say the top of the conference, if not two of the top 3 in the sport. But it's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Speaking of things that are fun to watch, we got the transfer portal. Going to get back in action here after spring football finishes up. And we're going to see who jumps in here as we get more and more into the spring part of the season. But I want us to circle up right now and have a conversation about who needs to go get what in the spring transfer portal. Who needs to go make some moves, man? Got a couple of positions of need here for a couple of big teams across college football. But let's start with Michigan. Like, Michigan, they got to go get a receiver. And that's not me speaking ill of who they have on their roster right now. I'm a Peyton O'Leary fan. I'm a Fred Moore fan. But I need to see them have the proper accessories to a Bryce Underwood offense here in 2025. Because here's the deal, man. You've told us what your New Year's resolution is by going out and grabbing a Bryce Underwood. You've told us what you're going to be when you went out and got Chip Lindsey to be your OC. And what was that? Want to be a little bit more dynamic, spread you out a little bit. We want to throw the football more. Not just we want to throw it more, we want to be more explosive as an offense. Well, that's great. You got a quarterback. But guess what, man? The outfit's only as good as the accessories. I'm glad you got a nice T-shirt and you feel good about the pants, but you better go get some shoes with that. Better go get yourself some, maybe get a hat if you're feeling that kind of way. Get a nice jacket. Like, I need to see the outfit be completed here from Michigan. Like, if that's New Year's resolution, okay, go take the proper steps. We want to be in shape. Great. You buy a gym membership? No? Okay, then we're not really being serious about this. Now, full transparency, I think that Michigan's going to be very serious in the spring portal about getting a receiver. I'll go out on a limb here. I think that unless there is someone that jumps in the portal at the receiver position that has obvious ties to another place or another coaching staff, I think Michigan is about to get after it in the transfer portal. I think they'll go land the top guy in there at the receiver position. That's just my feel. Now, in some respects, you're kind of at the mercy of who does jump into the portal because we know, I mean, nobody's tampering right now in college football, especially not in the spring after we put that call to action out. But regardless, I do think that has to happen if you're Michigan. I think you got to go find someone to maximize this Bryce Underwood offense here in Ann Arbor. Now, speaking of maximizing your offense, y'all, Penn State, same deal, same assignment. Probably more urgent, though. You got Drew Aller for 1 year, man. 1 year. What happened last season was just, I don't know how you can sleep with yourself at night in State College. I don't, because you got to the semifinals, 3 points away from playing for a national championship. You got the ball with a chance to drive down, kick one through, and go play Ohio State in a rematch. In a game now where the first time you all played where you gave them a good little push. Beside the point. You played in the semifinals and had the game that close with your entire wide receiving core getting 4 quarters of cardio, not recording a single catch, and still you were that close. Now, Tyler Warren is gone. Drew Aller, like I mentioned, is back. Running back room is back. You are probably in a good position on defense. Like, let's have some sense of urgency here. Like, the first wide receiver that I see that jumps in the spring portal, if I'm James Franklin and company, I'm going, okay, what's it going to take here? What do you need? What do you need? What do you want? I got a 50, I got a 5. What is it going to take? What's it going to take? That's what I need to see from Penn State, man. Like, we got to get the wallet out and go to work. I don't care what it costs. We have a potentially a first-round quarterback. Let's go get it done, man. Because the window is right now. There's probably going to be other windows for Penn State in the future, but I don't want to finish the 2025 season, walk off the field for the last time and say, man, who's our quarterback next year? Man, what if we had gotten him? Don't have the what if we had gotten him a receiver conversation. You can't have that. Cannot have that, should not have that. And if I'm Penn State, I am hitting the portal hard this upcoming spring. All right, you go get a Keon Coleman caliber guy. I know that was previous cycle, but roll with me here. You go get a game changer. Penn State probably plays for a national championship. And you're 4 quarters away with the team you've played before. All bets are off. So that's how I feel about Penn State. For Miami, let's go get some help on the back end, man. Because Cam Ward had the best single season a Miami quarterback has ever had. And he's probably going to go be the first pick overall in the NFL draft because of it. My opinion. Another conversation for another time. But listen, with him not coming back, you got to find a way to offset what you were defensively last year. Because, Cam Ward was a safety net. Carson Beck, I think, is still going to be pretty good. I don't know that he's going to be as good as Cam Ward. It's not a fair thing to bank on to ask of him in this upcoming season. The thing that I'm excited about, though, from Miami, you're under new management as a defense overall. Specifically, you got a new DB coach in Will Harris. Snagged him from Florida, now in Coral Gables. He's a great coach. The label that's tied to him, though, is he is also an elite recruiter. So I think that Miami's going to go to work here in the spring portal. They were nowhere near what their standard was last season on the back end. They were I believe they were in the 60s or 70s nationally when it came to yards allowed per game through the air. Also now they're in a conference where who you have to beat to win the conference and have an automatic bid to the college football playoff, you're going to throw the ball a little bit. All right, Clemson's not on the schedule right now, I don't believe, but you're probably going to have to beat them in the conference title game to go play for the college football playoff berth, right? You got SMU, they're going to throw the ball with Rhett Lashley, Louisville, Brom Squad, Syracuse, they're going to throw the ball. You've got a second chance now with Carson Beck. You're probably not going to get a ballistic level of offense like you did last season, but it still should be good enough to get it done here in 2025. All right? So if you don't have a defense, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, don't get fooled again, or however that goes. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Don't get fooled is what I'm trying to say here if you're Miami. Speaking of getting fooled, I think it was the state of Texas that president came from. And Texas needs to go get a tight end here in this upcoming spring portal cycle. Now, this is not a knock on who Texas has already in that room. This is more so a desire to have more insurance at the tight end position with what you lost from a season ago. Gunnar Helm, gritty guy, gritted it out of the combine, running a 40 with half an ankle or whatever he was dealing with there in Indy. You lost your top 3 pass catchers from a season ago. I think it's fair to say that you're going to need to rely on whoever's at the tight end position for you next season to some extent. Also, that's kind of Steve Sarkisian's MO. The last 2 seasons, he has had a tight end be in the top 3 in receptions on the team out there in Austin. So I think when you look at what Texas wants to be next season, they probably want to be, I believe, a little bit more run-centric. I don't think you give Arch Manning a refined version of the offense, but I do think you look at your best players, and a lot of them in the running back room, you probably want to run the football. So if you can have a tight end that is able to be a threat for you downfield and be able to be a guy off play action that is a mismatch with the safety when they bite a little bit too quickly on the run game, I think that's, giving Steve Sarkisian just another infinity stone to work with. Like Cato and I were talking about this before the show. Perfect world, you have a tight end who has a defined skill set, whether it's a pass catcher or whether he's just a mauler in the run game. Somebody that you know, hey, when he's in the game now for us, we know that his assignment we're asking him to execute, he is going to dominate. Whether it's in the, passing game, blocking game, we don't care. But the tight end position for Texas has been huge last couple of seasons. I think it will be huge here in the future, and I'd love to see them go get a little bit more insurance at the tight end position here this upcoming spring. Now, last thing I want to talk about, if I'm LSU, let's bring the boom back here. All right, no big justice. Let's bring 5 big booms back to Baton Rouge. I'd settle for 1 big boom, and the big boom I'm looking for is here on the defensive line for LSU. LSU has almost been the inverse of what we imagined LSU to be the last couple of seasons. Because you think LSU, when you close your eyes, you think violence up front. You think people fly into the football with bad intentions. You think hard hat and lunch pail up front. And that's not to say they haven't had that in spurts over the course of the last 5 years, but the last couple of years it's been Jaden Daniels. It's been Garrett Nussmeier last year going for 4,000 yards. It's been the defense where you're like, hey, do something. We're scoring over 30 a game. Can you please get a stop for us? Good night. I'd love to see LSU go add someone on the defensive line because last year they allowed 4 yards a carry. That's not good enough, I don't think, in any conference in college football to go win the whole thing. It's definitely not good enough in the SEC. Like the game, in large part, I say this, it has changed month to month. Like month to month, you have to have a quarterback, and you got to have a chance to go, score some points if you want to win a national championship. But week to week in the SEC, you better have those big human beings, because big human beings still move small human beings. That is still, from what I can tell, a scientific fact. So if I'm LSU, I understand there's a desire to not overpay on the defensive line. Kind of feel the same way I feel about Penn State with getting a wide receiver for Drew Aller. Like go get someone up front on the defensive line for LSU to maximize what you have at quarterback this season. You'll probably have a good quarterback in the future in Baton Rouge, but with the team you have right now, what you got through the portal at wide receiver, I think the offense is going to be in a good enough spot. Don't waste it by not having what you need in the trenches. So would love to see LSU bring the boom back. And if that means you got to go throw the wall around NIL style, let's go do that. So to recap here, Michigan, go get a wide receiver. Same deal, Penn State, maybe a little more urgency. Miami, let's go help our back end out a little bit here. Let's make sure we can score 40 and still win the football game. Let's not have that be the issue. Texas, tight end play for Sark has been huge. Let's get some insurance for that room. And then for LSU, let's go attack it on the D-line and get better there. Would love to see that for the guys, man. Would love to see that for the guys in Baton Rouge and really all those spots. But we've done this segment for better part of the last few weeks, and I think it's appropriate now as spring football is rounding into form. Spring intel that we want to hear from Auburn Live, the Auburn On 3 site. When you go check out the message board over there, What are you hoping you're hearing from spring practice? We'll unpack it right now, but first thing first, make sure you are subscribed. A lot of Auburn fans have gotten dialed in here. We appreciate you for that. If you haven't yet subscribed, we're not just going to talk about the spring intel we hope to hear. We'll talk about the spring intel we're actually hearing on the Plains. So get locked in over here, and we'll talk about your Tigers here moving forward. The first thing I want to hear Jackson Arnold is just, confident. Y'all, I'd be cool with borderline cocky for Jackson Arnold. I feel that way because last year at Oklahoma, I have to imagine just emotionally it was a roller coaster. He's subbed out against Tennessee. Subbed out's a nice way to put it. He's benched against Tennessee early on in the season when he's supposed to be the next dude in Norman, supposed to be the next savior for Oklahoma football. And it doesn't go that way early. And then he gets put back into the lineup, and you go beat Alabama, and he has a great day on the ground. It was an emotional roller coaster. I would just love to hear how Jackson Arnold is looking, feeling, throwing, operating in a confident fashion. We got to get Will Smith in here, full hitch style, and just get him just to feel himself a little bit more. Maybe we get him a couple new dance moves, get him his mojo back. I don't question if Jackson Arnold can throw a deep post. My question is, can we get him to feel good about himself in the context of this Auburn offense? That's what I want to see. The other thing I don't want to make sure is, or the other thing I want to make sure we don't hear when it comes to spring intel from Auburn, I do not want to hear that Deuce Knight is pushing Jackson Arnold for that QB1 job. Now, Deuce Knight is the future. I don't think it's unreasonable to assume that Deuce Knight could have a role in 2025, but I don't want to hear that he is giving Jackson Arnold a run for his money. I want to hear that Jackson Arnold is hooping. I want to hear that he's on point and that Deuce Knight is going to be awesome when it's his time to roll. But I'd love to hear that about Jackson Arnold because that would make me feel like the offense is going to be what you hoped it would be when Hugh Freeze got hired. That's kind of the next thing I want to hear. I want to hear the offense is dogging the defense during spring practice. I want to hear that the offense scored 30 in the first scrimmage and 40 in the next scrimmage. JD, doesn't that bode poorly for the defense? I'm not worried about the defense. I'm not. DJ Durkin's calling the thing. Feel good. Will it be the best in the SEC? Maybe, maybe not. Do you need that to win the conference? I know you need to have the offense show up more than you did last season. And so not just do I want to hear that the offense is operating at a high level, because that would mean that Cam Coleman is taking that next step. Eric Singleton, transfer wide receiver from Georgia Tech, doing just nasty things to the Auburn defense. I want to hear that the scrimmage is fairly clean. I don't want to hear about tip passes. I don't want to hear about, Jackson Arnold threw a pick, but it wasn't his fault. I just want to hear there was no turnovers. Everyone took care of the football, scored a lot of points, and vibes were awesome. Now, if that happens, you're probably also talking about what's going on in the running back room. Because Jarquez Hunter, a season ago, and really his entire career at Auburn, he jansported them in a few games. Jansported them, put the team on his back, and put him in a couple spots to potentially go finish and win the game, and it didn't happen that way, but he's no longer there. So Damari Alston, who is a tremendous back in his own respect, averaged 5 yards a carry a season ago. I want to hear that he is picking up where Jarquez Hunter left off. I want to hear that Damari Alston is looking strong. I want to hear that he's got some giddy up. I want to hear he's the every down back. Now, if we're talking about some other backs as well, it's never a bad thing. The word stable, to quote Cato, is never a negative thing to hear out of spring practice. But I do want to hear some good things about the running back room because at the end of the day, that is still, I think, Hugh Freeze's bread and butter in the RPO side of things. Last point here, I do not want the vibes out of Auburn spring practice to be the headline. I don't. And that's not saying that the vibes can't be great and I don't still want to hear that that's a good thing and hear they're in a good place. I don't want that to be the front page of the report coming out of Auburn. Because that's never been the question for Auburn football under Hugh Freeze. The minute he got hired, I think a lot of people felt more confident. I think a lot of people felt like it was headed the right direction. But direction and vibes and all that only get you so far. And I think now with where they're at under Hugh Freeze, going into now year 3, the expectation is to go and do something. That's not just from a fan base level. That's from an internal level as well, I believe. So if the vibes are the headline, that means that we're not talking about all the great things that a Jackson Arnold is doing, or we're not talking so much about what the Eric Singletons of that team are translating to. We're not talking about actually what's going on the football field. Because if what's going on the football field is looking as good as it's supposed to look, that's going to be the talking point. That's going to be the front page over at Auburn Live. So vibes, I'm here for. I'm okay with it, but I would much rather it be an on-field topic that takes up most of the oxygen, and then we can kind of infer what the vibes are like outside of that. So Let me know, Instagram, Twitter, at JD PicKell, what you want to hear at spring practice when it comes to checking out the latest intel from our friends over at Auburn Live. Jeffrey Lee, Cole Pinkston, Justin Hokanson, I mean, just doing the Lord's work over there. So we appreciate them for that. All right, man, the time has come. You heard from him earlier in the show. But Caden Smith, Cato, for those of y'all that are new to the show, we refer to him as. Cato, it's time, man. About to do the hypothetical ACC draft, drafting as the Big Ten in the SEC. So this is an anticipatory hypothetical draft. If the ACC is, in fact, going to blow up like we think it's going to, the Big Ten and the SEC are the two super conferences that we're expecting to clean house here. So we're going to do a 6-round draft here and pick and choose who we would take as these respective conferences off the board to join our own hypothetical conference as the Big Ten and the SEC. How are you feeling? Like, how are vibes for you right now?
Vibes are great, JD. I'm excited about this exercise. We were talking about wanting to bite a little bit more of the apple here when it comes to the ACC and Florida State and Clemson and what they have coming up in their future with or without the ACC. And I think that this is kind of the best way to go about it. I think this is one of the things where there's going to be some blue chip prospects. And then after that, it might be interesting to see what we prioritize as we play commissioner for these two leagues and what could potentially transpire. I'm glad we're only doing 6 rounds. I'm not trying to sit here and figure out where Wake Forest is going to end up in this thing if hypothetically the ACC imploded. But I think there's a lot to work with here, and I'm definitely excited, and I'm definitely curious what the people think as well about our new look conferences once we both have our new additions to the league. So I'm pumped about it, man. I'm excited to be commissioner for a day.
Couple of things to add to what you just said. There may very well be a couple of teams here that are package deals. Like we saw when the Big 12 came together. You had Arizona State go together, and USC, UCLA go together. So in this exercise, we're not drafting more than one at a time, but still, with that being said, this could be how it works. This could be how this whole thing shakes out. And even more context here. If you're like, why are they drafting the ACC? Settlement came out between Clemson and Florida State and the ACC essentially saying, hey, you can get out in 2030 for less than $100 million. So we're assuming now Clemson and Florida State will say, cool, here's the money, we're out, as soon as the Big Ten media rights deal comes up in 2030. And if you subtract a Clemson and Florida State, then you probably, I think, subtract some Jenga blocks to probably have the conference be in a tricky spot. So we don't wish that upon them, but even with that being said, we will take a quick anticipatory moment of silence for the ACC before we draft their teams. Okay, here we go. Caden, we'll do a coin flip, true to our draft format here. You were going to be drafting as the Big Ten. We got a quarter here. You got George Washington as heads, and you got Anna Mae Wong as our tails here for the other side of the quarter. You calling heads or tails here?
I'm calling Anna Mae. Give me tails.
Anna Mae. Here we go. I'm going to flip it and then do the whole deal where you put it on your arm. So let's see.
Don't drop that thing. Ooh, crisp.
It is tails. Caden
Petiti.
You have Cato Petiti. You have won.
His first win.
First one down, brother. The floor is yours. You are now on the clock. Who are you taking with your first pick here in this hypothetical ACC draft?
JD PicKell, you can't see my computer over here, but I'm looking at a map of where the Big Ten schools are located right now. And we have a pretty wide spread net here. Everywhere from Rutgers and Piscataway all the way to Seattle, Washington, down to Los Angeles. We have a lot of ground to cover here. And I think my conference, the Big Ten, in this situation has opened up the floodgates as far as a national geographical footprint. And with that in mind, with my first overall pick, I'm going to take the Florida State Seminoles.
Oof, good pick.
Broaden the footprint even more. Now we have all 4 corners of the nation touched. Florida State, I don't have to really explain them very much as far as their prestige. This is a team that's won a national championship in our lifetime. This is just a classic brand. We can't wait to see what we do in every sport, really, when it comes to the Big Ten. The travel has already been knocked out the window. This team's closer to Rutgers than some of the teams on the West Coast and some of the other geographical kind of. We can stay in a time zone, you know what I mean? We have some room to work with here. I think it speaks for itself. I think this was my clear 1-1. I think regardless of who I had pick, it's a little bit different. I think if you're the SEC because they don't have any ground laid in the state of Florida. But yeah, in this draft, welcome to the Big Ten, Florida State Seminoles.
Here we go, man. Hey, that's a It's a great pick by you. I want you to know, too, that was also my 1-1.
Nice.
So great pick. Great minds think alike. I hate that you took them, but I do think that that's going to be – I mean, dude, seeing the Florida State Seminoles with a Big Ten patch on their jerseys, that's just – it's going to be bizarre.
We got the Chief and Renegade just coming in hot in the Big Ten. I mean, what more could you ask for?
Dude, think about the flight, too, if you are flying from Los Angeles out to Tallahassee to play a game.
Oh.
I guess you're already doing, if you're the ACC, Coral Gables to Cal Berkeley, but I digress. So this feels pretty straightforward for me. Maybe in the real happenings of things, these teams would be a package deal. I don't know if that's the case, but I'll go ahead and take Clemson. All right, so Clemson, I know that the Gamecocks are going to be upset with me, but we're going to take you as a part of the SEC now. I'm hoping and praying that Dabo is still the head coach there, so we keep that brand of the Tiger Paw where it has been across college football. And that makes the last weekend of the regular season a conference matchup. So South Carolina, Clemson getting after it in the SEC for the. There's no more at-large impact there for either side when it comes to bolstering their resume for the future of the college football playoff. But with that being said, I will take Clemson. I like the brand. I like where they are trending, and I think they fit in nicely, geographically speaking, for the SEC. Again, I don't think South Carolina, the Gamecocks, are too happy with me for adding them, but listen, if we are drafting based on what the ACC has available, we would feel foolish to not take Dabo and company. So Clemson, welcome to the SEC. It just means more. Here we go, baby.
I think it's an interesting conversation too about Clemson joining the SEC, just because I think it's very clear that the SEC is pretty picky about who they want joining their conference. We're going to do this draft, and I don't think there's 6 teams, quite frankly, in the ACC, unless we just get to full conference realignment, Big Ten, SEC, looking like the AFC, NFC, and they're both just going to allocate a bunch of teams. I think if it doesn't come to that, the SEC will be picky. Greg Sankey's been asked multiple times about adding other teams to the fold, and he's like, we're good. We took Oklahoma and Texas. We don't need numbers to be strong here. But I think Clemson is one of those schools, along with Florida State, obviously, that they'd make that exception for. And I think it's a lot easier to see it because they already have a school in the state of South Carolina. And I think the interesting thing, too, is about the rivalry aspect of this. If it gets to this in the future, the SEC has the potential with a lot of these teams in the ACC to kind of loop up some rivalries here. When you talk about ACC and SEC rivals, talk beyond football as well and basketball. It's always a good thing to have too, across all sports. So I think that's a great fit. I think the Palmetto Bowl becoming a in-conference game just adds its juice to that. I don't think the fans would be as mad as you think. I think they'd be a little bit happy with that game, maybe having some even more increased stakes. So I think it'd be a good time. I think it's a great fit personally. I think pick 1 and pick 2, I think we're kind of the go-to picks, but I think overall from a fit perspective, we're doing good things over here.
Layups. Okay, so that's going to balloon the Big Ten up to 24 teams when we get to 6.
Fat conference.
The SEC, we're not believing in portion control for either of these conferences. I guess that's why they're the super conferences. The SEC would get to 22. So who is going to be your next pick, Cato, to join the Big Ten? If you're selecting from we're saying everything's available here in the ACC. So who are you taking for your next pick?
I think just given what the strategy is that I already have going for me here, it's just from a fit standpoint. I'm running up to the commissioner. I'm putting this pick in as fast as I can, and give me the Miami Hurricanes.
Wow. Okay.
Now we have 2 teams set up in the state of Florida, so it's not just weird to have one there. We have 2 big time teams in the state of Florida. You look at a team like a Florida that's in the SEC, and they're the kind of the only school there. Well, now we have more schools in the state of Florida than the SEC. I think that's a nice little tip of the hat, a little feather in the cap, if you will, of the Big Ten. And I think, like I mentioned, just looking at the map of this all, we have Washington and Oregon on one side of the country. We have Miami and Florida State on the other side, kind of adjacent from each other, and everything in between. Now we're going to just be able to attack and conquer. I guess I'm looking at this almost like a risk, like one of those games where you take over the entire country or the world. I'm looking at it from a map perspective, but it's Miami. It's a big time brand. I think we see them in the NIL era continue to flex their muscles as far as what they can do, as far as acquiring quarterback talent. We have the Cavender twins down there. We're going to have a lot going for us. I think just being this kind of program in the NIL era, I think it's a perfect fit for a big time conference. And I think welcome to the Big Ten. It's going to be hard to be playing up north in East Lansing and in Ann Arbor when it comes to November games. But I think the Hurricanes are built for it. So welcome to the Big Ten. Man,
okay, so you went state of Florida, which is actually, when you talk about the footprint, dude, the Big Ten's going to have a pretty good foot in the door for recruiting in the state of Florida. You can now make that pitch to guys in state if you're Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. Hey, come play here, you're probably going to go home at least once a year, maybe twice if the schedule shakes out that way. I mean, it's not a bad strategy.
Miami and Los Angeles, two big time markets that we have now to our name. So I like where we're at right now. For sure.
Good spot, man. Good spot. Okay, well, I'm torn here between two picks, so I hope you don't take my pick that I don't take, which I guess is how drafts work. I'm going to go North Carolina next. Ooh. Now, I'm taking North Carolina next. And it has nothing to do with Chapel Bill, though I do appreciate what he's doing there right now, even though I'd love to see him on Hard Knocks. This is a brand play. This is, I hate to say it, this is a bit of a basketball play for me. I think that UNC, from a football perspective, what they have been before, they've shown they can be a little bit spunky, be a little bit spry. So if you get the right head coach in there, I think there's resources around North Carolina that can be activated. So we got Clemson and North Carolina both joining the SEC. Also, geographically, it makes sense. Like, I mean, anytime there's a Waffle House, within a stone's throw, I'd have to imagine that's the case in Chapel Hill or around the Chapel Hill metro area. You belong in the SEC. So North Carolina, welcome to the SEC. You will be in there with some other teams in the Carolinas now. So we're kind of both taking a similar approach geographically. You're kind of locking down the state of Florida, trying to get my foot in the Carolinas a little bit here. And, I feel good about where we're at right now. Okay, interesting. So Clemson, North Carolina in the SEC, and Florida State and Miami in the Big Ten.
I think this is a great pick, JD. I think this is –
I don't know how I feel good about you saying that because we're, you like it for you. You feel like good for me or for you,
Both. I think both. I think this is – no, it's interesting because I think this is a better fit for the SEC. Like, I think – like you mentioned, I think the North Carolina brand is just like the sleeping giant – of college sports right now. They're so successful across all their sports. You talk about field hockey, lacrosse, basketball. If they could get it there in football, man, I think that would take them to another level. And what better conference to take you to another level than the SEC that can seemingly elevate any team into more of a football program. And I think they could be a good fit for you and really get it done. You have Michael Jordan, man. You have the best basketball player of all time. Some think I'm a LeBron guy. But I think that having just that kind of athlete, that kind of star power, that kind of activation you can get from a pocket standpoint. We're starting to see it now with Bill Belichick. Lord knows if it's going to work or not, but I think you're in a good spot here, and it puts me. There's now that was in my one of my top prospects.
Okay.
The four top teams on my big board are crossed off. I don't know if UNC would have been the best fit for my league. Closest school is probably Maryland, I think, when we're talking about my map here. But I'm stuck between two. This is a tough one. I have two teams I love, and again, I feel the same way you probably feel. If you take one, I don't want you taking the other. I'm going to go bold here. We're going to try to take another state that isn't represented just yet in the Big Ten, but now it is. SMU, welcome to the Big Ten. We're taking them. We have no teams in the state of Texas. Now we have a Big Ten team in the state of Texas. And I think financially this is an interesting deal too, because this is a team that is currently paying to be in the ACC pretty much. We upgrade them to a better conference. Lord knows what that means for us financially. We'll probably be able to see eye to eye on a deal there as well, pretty easily, seeing that they're doing things. This is, again, a fan base in a school that's been itching, begging, crawling to be in the Power Four. Now they are there. We're going to take them up another level. And now we have a team in the state of Texas who can maybe be kind of our home base, the central most point of our league that now goes from Los Angeles to Texas to Florida and, of course, everything in the Midwest and up north. So give me SMU. Welcome to the Big Ten.
It's a great pick. I don't know if I could have pulled the trigger there because I have two Texas schools, but if you hadn't picked them,
it was a positional need.
I might have done it, man. Positional need. And that's what it's about. It's best available versus positional need. And I think you probably got both if we're going to be real. I mean, also the trend to have SMU with all the money. They just played for a conference title their first year in the ACC. There's a lot to like about SMU. Also, who's to say that SMU isn't in one of those conferences? Who's to say that SMU isn't in one of the Big Ten or the SEC if they don't have the death penalty? Like, I don't know how that whole thing would have shaken out, but SMU was one of those it schools in college football before all those things went down over there in Highland Park territory. So I like that pick, Cato. There's some big money now in both these conferences. I mean, SMU, Miami, Florida State, big brands. I think we're drafting in the correct order, to be real. I don't know if it'll shake out this way, but I think we're drafting in the way that will ultimately benefit the conference as well as the schools.
I think these are some blue chip prospects, I think, as far as if the ACC did end up RIPing, I think that these are probably the five programs that you really want if you're in these leagues, I think, geography aside.
No, I don't disagree. I mean, okay, so speaking of geography, I just crossed off my next pick, and this is I'm excited what this could mean for this school on a recruiting level. I'm taking Georgia Tech to join the SEC. Now, I'm taking Georgia Tech to rejoin the SEC, baby.
Wow.
Georgia Tech originally was in the SEC when it was originally founded, I believe. It's the unofficial capital of the South, man. You tell me the school in Atlanta that is consistently just rated by SEC schools can't bow up a little bit with that SEC logo now on their helmet, and hopefully you would imagine a little bit more money in their pockets to go do some damage in the city of Atlanta and grab some top talent. I mean, I love what Brent Key is doing there. I hope he's there when I get this school in my conference. No idea what it means for basketball. No idea what it means for any other sport. But I will say this, Georgia Tech, welcome to the SEC. Nay, welcome back to the SEC, back like you never left. Yellow Jackets, again, the unofficial capital of the South in Atlanta, stays in the Southern Conference. And welcome to the SEC, Georgia Tech.
JD, you could have picked this 6th. This was not in the plans here, man.
We again we had a good eval on the guy.
They weren't on my big board. Just not on my big board.
And I honestly too, like it would have been weird for Georgia Tech. Not that weird because I guess the academic level would have been a fit for the Big Ten, but Georgia Tech in the Big Ten, which would have been like toothpaste and orange juice. It's like the Big Ten jingle or the CBS jingle with the Big Ten. It would have felt we would have gotten used to it, but I think it makes sense they weren't on your board. It would have been malpractice, I think, for me to not take a Georgia Tech.
Fair.
Hurts my ego a little bit. I could have taken them later.
Definitely could have.
But hey, I mean, I think who's another great reach in draft history? Bruce Irving, I think, was a reach by the Raiders or the Seahawks when he got drafted. I think he did pretty well for them in the NFL.
All I'm saying is that Georgia Tech game this year, if that was a conference game, I just imagine how much more juice that would have been. I mean, would we get 8-9 overtimes out there? So I do like you taking those rivalries and bringing them home. So you have a couple opportunities to do that as well moving forward here. But Georgia Tech wouldn't have been my pick there at 3.
Okay. Who is so we each have 3 picks. We're halfway through the draft on both sides. Who are you taking at 4?
We'll go a little bit more rapid fire here, and I think when you look, again, regionally, we're adding another team from the great state of California to the Big Ten. Give me Stanford. Give me the Stanford Cardinal.
Okay.
This is a program, man. It was a shame that they were kind of left in the dust, I think. In the Pac-12, they were kind of one of the last schools that was kind of scrambling when things went south. But this is Stanford, man. This is a team that is regularly good across all sports. A ton of Olympians. We have Tiger Woods representatives. We have Christian McCaffrey, Andrew Luck, new general manager of the football program. I think this school is an absolute mainstay. It's an iconic brand, and I think it's another program that's going to be even more activated, I think, in the future when you look at NIL. No one, I think, is really worried about Stanford. They've taken their lumps on the football field recently here. They're in kind of a weird just time of their timeline when you look athletically as far as moving to the ACC and not making that much sense. Welcome to the Big Ten. We have USC and UCLA here. It's a lot more comfortable for y'all. We have Oregon, Washington, some familiar faces for you on the West Coast. So I'm just going to bolster up the West Coast a little bit more, go with Stanford here. And I think this is just, again, a fantastic brand. I think a top maybe 3-4 brand in the ACC right now when you talk about just overall college athletics right now.
Whenever I see those like NCAA commercials where they're racing for like, I forget what the award's even called, but they're racing for like the most points or something like that. You know what I'm saying?
Cup. Yeah.
Capital One Cup. Stanford's always top 3. So a lot of Capital One Cups coming to the Big Ten. Again, like you said, some familiar faces on the West Coast. Okay, that's a good pick, man. I'm gonna take an angle here that is purely athletic and purely the brand, and I don't know how much we're gonna get from this from a resources perspective. I think they're in the game a good amount on the NIL level. I think Louisville, given the activation of the SEC. It's going to make the Kentucky game a lot of fun. Basketball is going to be awesome. Jeff Brom, the Brom squad, is going to make the SEC a little bit on their heels, I think, with the way they're throwing the football downfield. So we'll take Louisville. We'll add them in. It's a good ad, I think, for football. It's a great ad for basketball, and I will feel tremendous about adding another school in the state of Kentucky to the SEC. Louisville, welcome. We're glad you're here.
That one hurts. That was my next pick on the board, and I was really hoping you wouldn't be able to yet again take another rivalry and just put it right into the fold. So I got to give you your props there.
I'll take it.
They have a big budget over there, a great history, I think, across sports. I mean, you have Lamar Jackson,
Adidas money,
Patino. Like Louisville is going to be in the fight in the future. And I think that's an excellent fit geographically, along with just in general for the SEC. I'd be curious to see if that move happened in the future. Now you put me in a tough spot, man. Like, just thinking out loud here, like, I could take Duke and like take that rivalry from you, so y'all just don't have all of the best rivalries, in the sport. But I don't have really a flag planted in North Carolina. I feel like I'm comfortable giving you that territory, especially on the football field. There's a couple other schools here. I'm going to go with a little bit of curveball here just to kind of go with your Georgia Tech curveball that we didn't see coming. Give me Pitt, man. Pitt
interesting.
We're in the Northeast. We have some schools there. We're going to add them to the fold. Not a lot of people know this. One of 5 programs that has multiple championships in football and in basketball is Pitt. Long history there. There's a lot of good things going for Pitt, and I think this is just a great geographical fit as well. People are saying, oh, you're going to Florida, you're going back to Cali, you're going to Texas. We're still the Big Ten. We can still do what we have to do as far as being in the Midwest, the Northeast. So give me Pitt. I think this is a great fit across all sports. They have like 19 varsity sports over there, kind of similar to a Stanford, where it's just might not be a direct football move. My first 3 picks were very, very direct football money moves. I think my last 2 are more geographical picks that make sense and just overall programs, if you will, that might fit the Big Ten. So give me Pitt.
That's a good pick. I didn't see that one coming, but when you say it out loud, that's a good pick. That's a very good pick.
Thanks, man.
I'm going to stay in the academic lane. You just alluded to it. I'm going to double down on it. When I heard about the alleged Darian Mensah deal, I'm like, okay, Duke's playing ball now.
They are.
Duke's playing ball. So I'm going to add Duke, and I'm looking at my roster here in my draft class. A lot of academic juice. So we'll take it. North Carolina, Georgia Tech.
A lot of basketball juice.
A lot of basketball. I mean, I guess we're just corking the bat in basketball unintentionally, and we'll do that, I suppose. The UNC Duke rivalry just gets amplified by throwing some SEC logos on there. We'll take Duke to our conference. We'll add some more juice to the Carolinas now, as we now have Clemson, North Carolina, Duke, and South Carolina all in our conference. Big money, mo problems, and it just means mo. So we'll take Duke, and we'll add them to the SEC. And I'm going to bank on the Darian Mensah money being a little bit of an Easter egg here, or a little bit of a breadcrumb that eventually leads to hopefully more investment from Duke on the football side. I'm all about it.
Quietly a 9-10 win team, I believe, last year under Manny Diaz. Things are going up for them. I think Duke's going to be in a good spot here in the future, and even better spot hypothetically in the SEC. That leaves me with my last pick, and there's a lot of places I could go here, and they all seem kind of not lateral, but very similar, and you would take them for different reasons. Just to talk out loud here, like Virginia Tech's obviously a program that has a ton of history, and another one that feels like isn't quite as activated as far as what their potential is on the NIL front and just what they can be. Lane Stadium's one of the best environments, obviously, in the country. I think Syracuse would be a great geographical fit for me. You have a little rivalry with Rutgers, potentially.
Broadcasting school.
Basketball. Oh, just academically, I think it'd be a great fit as well. And then you have Virginia, which would add some basketball juice, winning a national title recently. And low-key, one of the bigger budgets across the country. If you look in the books, they can handle business over there. I think between all of those, I can't let you have all the basketball. Give me Virginia. Virginia will be my last pick here. It's a weird pick from a football standpoint. People are probably like, what? Like, this is a football program that doesn't quite make sense right now with the Big Ten. Listen, you don't want every team in your conference to be super dominant, right? Someone's got to lose these games. Virginia will probably take their lumps here. But I think outside of football, this will be a good money pick for us geographically. We can go up to Maryland, super quick trip. Rutgers, Penn State wouldn't be too far for the guys. So give me Virginia to round it out. I didn't think they were going to pick them at all. Honestly, they're at the bottom of my board. But the more I talked out loud, the more it just made sense to me. So give me Virginia.
Dude, sneaky big brand. Sneaky big
very
brand.
Quietly. Very, very quietly.
Very hush. That's a good draft by you, man.
Thanks, man.
It's a great draft by you. We'll recap the classes here as soon as I make this last pick. But you mentioned it. I'm taking Vatech. I'm taking Vatech. I couldn't live with myself if Virginia Tech was still on the board here when we got through 6 rounds of this thing. This is a football brand thing. This is a brand in the South kind of thing. I think Vatech actually has a lot more juice in the Southeast than maybe some folks even realize. We get Enter Sandman now in the SEC. You got Florida on one sideline as Enter Sandman is rolling, or Alabama or whoever, and that's going to be just absolutely awesome.
Maybe I messed up. That actually does sound hype.
It's going to be sick, right? It's going to be kind of cool.
I wish I would have had that.
It's going to be kind of cool. I think Virginia fits well in the Big Ten, though, I would say.
I think it's a good fit. I think it's good that we have a rivalry across the Big Ten and the SEC now, though, which we don't have a lot of here if you look across right now in this future conference. I think it's good that we have one that's kind of we're staring across each other, Virginia Tech. That'll be good. But, yeah, you bringing up Enter Sandman, if you would have mentioned Michael Vick as an alum, I probably would have been like, you know what, might have picked the wrong team there. But I think we're looking good right now.
That was what I was going to say. This is a play in hopes that once Mike Vick has a couple of big-time seasons at Norfolk, takes his talents back home, Mike Vick, the new head coach of the Virginia Tech Hokies, and call it 2031.
Maybe coach Tyrod Taylor.
Hey, I'm here for it. I'm all the way here for it.
Who knows?
All the way here for it. That's great stuff, man. So to recap it, Cato's Big Ten will consist of the existing Big Ten plus Florida State, Miami, SMU, Pitt, Stanford, Virginia. Stacked, dude. That's stacked. You might have won this draft.
I like it.
You might have won this draft. I'm not going to lie to you.
Heavy.
I'm not going to lie to you at all. We did some work to try and up the basketball and the GPAs across the SEC. Look at the average. We got Duke, Louisville, North Carolina, Georgia Tech, Clemson, and Virginia Tech. I feel good about that draft. I'm not going to say that I won the draft, but I feel good about it. And I do think that some of the brands we added there, though, to that conference diversifies the portfolio a little bit. But overall, man, I feel good about that. I wouldn't be upset if that's how it looked at the end of the day. I wouldn't be upset if those were again, there's more teams in the SEC, obviously. This is not a 4-hour show, so we're not going to draft the whole ACC. But I think that's probably a good split. Like I wouldn't hate if that was how it looked at the end of the realignment, dominoes falling.
Yeah, again, I think it's going to be an interesting thing to see how picky the SEC is. Like, I think across the board, as far as like a brand power standpoint, there's not too many teams here that they're just going to be rushing to add to the conference. I think Greg Sankey takes quality over quantity, I think, right now, and it'll be interesting to see if this does shake out in the next couple of years, what they decide to take, and if the Big Ten maybe goes in the route of my play, which is just continental domination and just getting as many Infinity Stones as we can and putting our roots down in Florida and Texas and get another big brand like Stanford in the fold. So we'll see, man. I think it's a fun exercise, and I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays out and which of these schools kind of has priority and the most money's on their head when it comes down to it. Big
Ten worldwide, wide. Investors, possibly you.
Prestige worldwide, Big Ten worldwide, whatever you want to call it. We Caden Petiti is happy with his roster.
Cato Petiti.
Right now.
It's a good draft,
and
man.
JD Sankey.
JD Sankey and Cato Petiti. That's a good. Hey, has a nice ring to it. So if either of those commissioners are watching and want a little bit of help, selecting your future teams in your conference,
you got to
I believe the DMs are open on both the social media platforms. Cato, we got a playoff field to finish this tremendous Chop It Up Thursday out. I want to go just 1 through 12 with you and then just get your take at the end of that field. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, let's do it. This is one of my most anticipated drafts we've had. Or not drafts, but playoff fields that we've had. This is a topic that I think will hit home with a lot of people, and we'll have a lot of takes.
It may be kicking a hornet's nest, no pun intended. We're going to do a playoff field for the top. This is crucial now. Live mascots in college football. So we appreciate the costumes. We appreciate you throwing on, a fake helmet or whatever you're doing for your college football Saturday. If you're in the mascot costume, we're going strictly live mascots. So the top 4 seeds that will have a bye in this playoff field are as follows. Number 1, the top seed in this whole thing is Ralphie from Colorado. You see that thing coming around the corner, dude. Those poor college kids are hanging on for dear life. I don't know what qualifies you to run Ralphie across the stadium. It feels like something bad's always about to happen whenever he's screaming down the sideline. That is the most exhilarating mascot for me to watch. To me, he's number 1. Close second, Bevo. Mm-hmm. Right now, the altercation between him and Uga back in the Sugar Bowl when Georgia played Texas gives me a good vibe with him, a little bit of an edge. I'm not condoning it. I'm just saying it told me what he has under the hood. Bevo at 2. Now, speaking of Uga, he's at 3. Classic. Stood the test of time. One of the most likable mascots, in my unbiased opinion, in college football. He's at 3. And then the Eagle from Auburn, War Eagle, is in here. We couldn't have a mascot that wasn't able to fly in the top 4. Like you and I were talking about it before. A bird has got to get a bye, and that bird for us, for me at least, is Auburn's War Eagle. Now, 5 through 12, we talk about the South Bend Invitational. It's no different when it comes to the mascot field. The Notre Dame Leprechaun, number 5 seed.
He is live.
In the playoff field,
dude. He is a live mascot.
And I believe he watches this show. So if you're watching this, program guy, Notre Dame Leprechaun, shouts to you. People are saying, JD, he's not a live mascot. Oh, trust me, it's a live mascot. We met him on the field in Atlanta. Good dude. And I'm not so sure he won't make a run at this thing, Cato. I'm not so sure he won't make some noise when it's all said and done. Number 6, Mike the Tiger is our 6th seed. Need him in the lineup more. Okay, now He brings it whenever he's out there, but I need to see a little bit more consistency. He's kind of the Anthony Davis of this playoff field. I don't know if he's going to be is he in street fur or is he suit? I don't know. I want to see him in the lineup more consistently. Might have a bye if he ends up being more available. And number 7, rivalry. Texas A&M's mascot at number 7, beautiful collie. I might be saying the name wrong there. I apologize. Revel, the mascot from Texas A&M. Number 8, Bill the Goat from Navy.
G5.
Shout out to the troops. Shout out to the G5, the number 8 seed. And number 9, Stella, the owl from Temple.
Another G5. Let's go.
Ever seen Disaster Artist with the Franco brothers? Stella. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But if you've seen that movie, that's what it made me think of. And number 10, Traveler. The horse that Tommy Trojan rides would put him a little bit higher up in this ranking if he, was a little bit more independent. Like without Tommy Trojan, how far does Traveler make it? I'm not saying I know. I'm just asking the question. At number 11, Harry the Husky from Washington. A lot of juice there. At number 12, Smokey from Tennessee. So that's the playoff field. What are your notes here, Cato, before we get out of here on this beautiful Chop It Up Thursday?
I think that when you're talking top 4 seeds, excellent job. I think that Uga is super beloved. I think that Bevo is kind of the opposite of Ralphie. Like they're both big physical presences that you love for very different reasons. Like we didn't know Bevo had that dog in him, pun intended, until he tried to bring the fight to Uga. Like we haven't seen him move with that level of quickness before in our lives. But
yeah,
he's just a classic one. The hand logo is literally like him. Like the horns are just so iconic from a logo, mascot, hand, signal perspective. Great job there. Ralphie, like you mentioned, living on the edge. I'll never forget. This year was the first year I really watched Ralphie run up close and personal. Not up close and personal, but I was really dialed in before the game. Colorado was playing one of those high-stakes November Big 12 games where they were still in the hunt for that conference title. And the announcing crew, I'm pretty sure it was Klatt, and our guy Gus Johnson just muted the mics and let us just enjoy the moment. And that was the first time I really got to look at how fast it was running. And it looks dangerous for sure.
Dude,
but
moving.
But if we're talking danger, I look at your top 12, JD. I don't see Boomer and Sooner here. A 1-2 punch that has shown us danger. They have crashed. We've seen that thing go down. Didn't stop them from being in the lineup next week. I think they are too resilient and too iconic of a brand. Boomer and Sooner, a 1-2 punch that should be in the playoff for sure. But I think the biggest omission is Renegade. I think Florida State Renegade, just when you're talking about the horses you have in here, I understand Traveler's a great horse, like sure, but I think my horse of choice, if we're talking horses, there's a lot of dogs in this lineup too. We have Huskies, we have Revelry, we have Smokey, we have Uga. I think there's too much dog, not enough horse. Renegade, I think with the beautiful coat on Renegade, the fact that we have the Chief, I don't know how to pronounce his name, we'll just call him Chief-O, throwing the stake into the ground. I think there's just so much more hype around that moment. I think that's the biggest omission here, but I think overall, good job, good analysis. But those are I'd say my 2 biggest omissions. But I'm glad you gave the group of 5 its flowers as well and gave some representation there. I think a lot of birds, a lot of dogs, maybe some more horses, maybe some more variety in there. But overall, I think Big Spur might have a word. But I know you have some personal beef with Big Spur. You said you were a little underwhelmed when you met him the first time. But yeah, those are my biggest omissions. I'm here to stake the claim for Boomer and Sooner, the horses, and for my guy Renegade down in Tallahassee.
Yeah, man. Like no beef with Big Spur. It's just, you hear they say never meet your heroes. You hear that a lot, and just maybe it was also that Darius Rucker was standing next to Big Spur, and so I was like maybe more attentive to what Darius Rucker was doing as opposed to Big Spur. Also, it wasn't a home game. It was at Tennessee, so like maybe they didn't let him spread his wings, both metaphorically and literally. So I need to see more from Big Spur. Next season, we'll run it back, and we'll maybe get him off the bubble and get him into the dance. But I might have sold us too on our Texas A&M mascot. I believe it's Revel. I think I've heard someone call him or her Revelry.
I don't know the name.
Texas A&M's
I do like the sash that
beautiful
he/her wears. Like the outfit is elite. I think them and Smokey are just too similar. I think you could have done without. I think you should have picked one and stuck to it.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
Very, very similar. There's a lot of Bulldogs you could have picked from too. I definitely think you picked the right Bulldog there. Husky getting some representation there too, but
there's some dog in it.
We have dogs in the fight. That's at the end of the day, you can critique in the comments who you think should have made the cut here, but we've got some dog left in the fight, and the bark does in fact match the bite here when we're talking about your field.
What a bar. What a bar to send us out of here on this tremendous playoff field, ACC drafting, chopping it up Thursday. Cato, appreciate you, man, making the show what it is. Appreciate y'all making the show what it is, man. Make sure you are subscribed on your way out of here. If you haven't yet subscribed to the podcast feed, may not be the worst idea. A couple of treats over for you there that may or may not exist here on the YouTube channel. Just food for thought. So with that being said, for Cato, as I mentioned on the ones and twos, for myself, Jody PicKell, we love y'all. We appreciate y'all. You matter. We're going to keep this party rolling, and we will see y'all.